All right. Turns out the $1.7 trillion omnibus bill that's heading to President Biden's desk is filled with wasteful spending, a lot of questionable spending, depending on what your politics are also. And some of the spending is being used for gun control, focusing on that. Here on the screen are some of the ways the Biden administration hopes to curtail gun violence. So they're looking at a 14% increase for ATF funding, over $700 million to enhance red flag laws, $4 million for a domestic violence lethality reduction initiative, a program that would discourage using firearms, get this, in self-defense. Let's bring in our panel to weigh in. Former New York City Commissioner Brian Anderson, former Colorado State Senator Ted Harvey, and the host of Money Talk with Melanie Collette. Ted, you're our guest kind of today on our panel, so we'll start with you. Your thoughts? Colorado is an interesting state when it comes to gun rights. Give us your feel on this.
Well, Colorado used to be a very strong proponent of Second Amendment rights, and when the Democrats took over the House and the Senate and the governor's office for the first time in 40 years, back in 2013, they passed some of the most radical gun control legislation of any state in the country. And about 2 years ago, they passed a red flag law that pretty much said that anybody could turn in anybody that they thought they wanted to say an ex-boyfriend was violent or an ex-girlfriend was mentally ill, and so the government could come in and take away their guns. And that is a complete violation of the Second Amendment. But here we have the federal government now essentially giving bribes to state governments around the country to pass this kind of legislation all across the country. And it is going to result in people getting hurt, police officers getting hurt, agents getting hurt, because people that are mentally unstable are going to be put in a situation that the government's going to be storming down their doors and people are going to get killed. And we had that here in my county about 6 years ago. And that's all this legislation is take away law-abiding citizens' Second Amendment rights and actually putting in harm's way the police officers that we need to be out there trying to protect us.
Melanie, your thoughts on this?
You know, the most maddening part of that law is the part that is supposed to encourage women to seek less lethal means to defend themselves in the midst of domestic violence. If anything, domestic violence victims should have an expedited means of getting lethal force, because that is an equalizer. If a guy is bigger than you or can punch you in the face, some lead equalizes that situation. So that part of the law made me extremely angry.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Brian, on this? You're from a city, New York, which tends to make it difficult to get guns, but it seems like the bad guys have no problem getting them.
Well, that's exactly right. I didn't see any wording whatsoever that criminalizes having an illegal weapon. You know, legal gun owners who jump through hoops to have a proper license and training, you know, are being chipped away at constantly. I mean, what right is next going to be chipped away at? The freedom of speech, perhaps? That's already happened. But, you know, that's what we're seeing around this country, and we've just got to stand tight one of these days and say no.
Yeah. And also in this, I've got this list, I don't have time, and we didn't do a graphic on this, of like 12 different things related to equity funding, including an equity incubator at the universities of Shady Grove. We've got LGBTQIA Pride Centers, $1.2 million for that. And by the way, I don't think any of us care whether somebody's gay or not, but we're talking about a bill in which we're spending a lot of money. And I could go through just one after another. $1 million for Zora's House in Ohio. Here's one, $3.6 million for Michelle Obama Trail in Georgia. And again, Ted, you've been involved inside the Beltway for a very long time. These are the kinds of things that people are buying votes, if you will. Was it see how I spent your money? But to the rest of us, if we could go through, remember Ronald Reagan used to talk about how he wanted the line item veto to go in and say, no, we don't need this, don't need this, don't need this. But there it is. It's filled with them.
You bet. I worked in the Reagan administration. That was one of his #1 priorities. But if Biden had that opportunity, he wouldn't be redlining any of this bill. This is
No,
the Democrat
none of that.
House,
No.
the Democrat Senate, and the Democrat president pushing through at the very last minute their radical leftist dream bill. But the problem is we have two handfuls of Republicans that are working with them to get this passed, and that is what outrages me the most. Is we are just weeks away from having the control of the House and having control of the purse strings, where all budget bills have to originate is in the House. And we have Republicans that are working with the Democrats to get this pork barrel bill through the process at the very last minute to give them everything that they've been wanting for years. The American people, and specifically Republican donors, should be outraged by what's happening, and they should never give money again to the RNC or to the Democrat Senate Electoral Committee. They should be giving it to PACs like mine, the Committee to Defeat the President, because we'll never give money to these rhinos that are selling away our kids' future.
Yeah, by the way, another example, $2 million to MLK Labor, which is in Washington State, an affiliate of the AFL-CIO that expelled Seattle police officers from union ranks. Okay? So, again, this is the way. Any in particular thing you may agree with or disagree with, but the overall spending, just one group after another trying to buy their support. That's what it looks like. Stick around, if you will. We've got more to talk about coming up in our next block, and that includes the cops who saved Christmas every day. Hear who went the extra mile.